I ngā mana, i ngā reo, i ngā iwi o te motu, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Can I greet you all in the 160 or so languages that we speak across Aotearoa, New Zealand? And in my mother tongue, namaskaram. Welcome to Maunga Kia, to the boss. It's lovely to have the Prime Minister here, Deputy Prime Minister, a number of my Labour Party colleagues who are here as well. And can I also just specifically acknowledge some of our candidates who are here with us, and I'm just going to ask you to stand up real quick. I know that we have here with us George Hampton, who is the candidate for the North Shore. We have Pradak Singh, who's standing for us in Botany. And I believe we have Fesaitu Solomone with us as well, who is the candidate for Tamaki. Can I also acknowledge all of you who are here with us today? You all represent different groups, different organizations and communities, and have been working incredibly hard over the past few years. So can I thank you and acknowledge you all for that? Once again, welcome to Maunga Kia. This is my home, my community. It is also home to the New Zealand Warriors. So I think it's my turn to say up the waz. One of the things that I absolutely love about Maunga Kia is just how diverse we are. Even if it's ethnic diversity that you're talking about, close to 50% of this electorate identifies with either an ethnic or a Pacific community. And then, of course, there's gender diversity. There's diversity in terms of abilities and disabilities, the languages we speak, the faith communities that we may belong to. And that is reflective of the diversity of our nation. Aotearoa, New Zealand is incredibly diverse. If you're just looking at ethnic diversity, over 213 ethnicities represented across the country. We collectively speak over 160 languages. And I believe strongly, Labour believes strongly, that we are stronger as a nation because of it and not in spite of our diversity. However, we also know that for our diverse communities to be able to thrive, we need to become an even more accessible and inclusive society as well. And I'm proud that we've taken steps towards that, whether it's strengthening our population agencies and the work that they do, establishing the Ministry for Ethnic Communities, establishing Whaikaha, the Ministry of Disabled People, strengthening social cohesion, because we know that we can't take that for granted. We need to become a society that truly values diversity, but is also more inclusive. We're a party that understands equity and the fact that one size does not fit all. That we may have different concerns, needs, and aspirations, but for all of us to get ahead, we need to be able to respond to those in ways that are relevant, so that everyone, including our migrant communities who come to New Zealand to get ahead, so that all of us can feel safe, valued, respected, a sense of belonging, and supported to be able to participate in all aspects of life and society. So on that note, once again, can I welcome you all here today, and I will hand over to my colleague, Andrew Little, who is our spokesperson for immigration. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora tātou katoa. Namaste. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a great pleasure and an honour to be here. I won't go through all the acknowledgements that Priyanka has just gone through, but just say what a fantastic opportunity it is to be here today to talk about our manifesto commitments on immigration. One thing that Labour believes in and has enacted in the time we've been in government is a balanced immigration system that contributes to a strong economy and opportunities for people. Immigration that supports good jobs and higher wages, great workplace conditions, that protects national security and has no tolerance for migrant exploitation. An immigration system that builds strong multicultural communities, allows for family reunification and meets our humanitarian commitments around the world. That's what a re-elected Labour government will deliver. Because when it comes to immigration, that's what Labour has done. We managed to keep the borders safe during the global pandemic. Since then, we've approved residence for more than 200,000 people who were living here when the borders closed. We filled critical skills gaps, approving visas for more than 9,000 healthcare workers, more than 16,000 hospitality workers, and more than 37,000 construction workers. Labour's expanded opportunities for young Kiwis to go on an OE with better access in the UK, Spain and Vietnam just recently announced. We've jump-started the tourism industry with more than 400,000 visitor visas approved since the borders opened. We've fulfilled the promise made to double the refugee quota. And we've added hundreds of staff to Immigration New Zealand in the last year to speed up visa processing. And let's be clear, they're the very staff who will be at risk when we have the National Party and the ACT Party promising to cut NB by 30% or 50% or take your choice. This is why we need to re-elect a Labour government. There's more to do in immigration, and it starts today. Today, I'm delighted to announce a major step forward for Labour's immigration rebalance. A re-elected Labour government will reunite families with a Canadian-style super visa. Labour's super visa is a 10-year multi-entry visa that will allow parents and grandparents to visit for successive stays of up to 5 years during the visa's lifetime. This is about ensuring migrants, who can often be isolated and without support structures, have the family around them when they need it. Labour's super visa will be available to parents and grandparents, whether blood or adopted since childhood, of a New Zealand citizen or permanent resident sponsor who lives here and can provide the necessary financial support. But we have much more to do in immigration than just that. Labour is committed to a coordinated, connected, longer-term approach for our immigration system. That's why today I'm also announcing that we will implement the Productivity Commission's recommendation to publish a government policy statement for the immigration system. Now, I know people haven't exactly been marching in the streets demanding a government policy statement, but we will do one for immigration because that's what gives people certainty. A government policy statement will improve transparency, accountability, and provide greater certainty for planning to employers, local government, the NGO sector, and all of our communities, of course, including migrants. Let me be clear about something else. Migrant exploitation is a crime. The exploitation of workers and migrants is repugnant to Labour. It's repugnant to the values of good New Zealanders, and we simply will not tolerate it. Earlier this week, I announced a package of supports for exploited migrants, including free job search assistance to get people back into work. The National Party criticised that. They seem to think that money is more important, getting money off migrants is more important than doing the right thing for exploited migrants. Labour will continue to strive to eliminate migrant exploitation through ongoing enforcement work by empowering ethnic communities to take system-level ownership of exploitation in their communities. It's a commitment to work with migrant communities on how we stamp migrant exploitation out. I'm announcing here that one of the ways we will do that is by piloting the linking of work visas to sectors or rural areas with labour shortages instead of just to a specific employer. Now, I want to speak to the refugees here in this room and on the live stream. We are very lucky to have you as part of our country and in our communities. We are a better country because of the contribution that you all make. Doing our part as a good global citizen has always been a core Labour value. It's why Labour has doubled the refugee quota, and for the first time ever, this year, the quota was actually filled. It's why Labour will continue to resettle and support refugees in New Zealand. It's why we will ensure equitable support services to asylum seekers subsequently recognised as refugees. But we can do more for refugees too. Today I'm also announcing that a re-elected Labour government will fill a gap in our immigration system by providing adequate support services to refugee claimants who are in New Zealand while their claims are being processed. And we'll fill another gap too. Labour will work to extend the Victims of Family Violence work visa to people whose partners are on temporary visas. We'll also move forward with a full review of support for victims of family violence within the immigration system. Labour is also committing to a broader review of family and partnership immigration policy with an initial focus on culturally arranged marriages. We'll continue to implement the review of the recognised seasonal employer scheme, and we will implement the Refugee and Migrant Employment Action Plan. Only Labour has the plan for immigration for the New Zealand that we want for today and tomorrow, because in the end, Labour is in it for you. And now it's my privilege and pleasure to welcome to the stage someone who I am very proud to call a good friend of mine, someone who did so much to get this country through the COVID pandemic, who's rebuilt our education system after the wreckage left by National. He's in it for you, he's in it for New Zealand, he's our leader, he's the Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins.
Tēnā koutou katoa, malo elelei, ki orana, talofa lava, whakalofa lahi atu, malo nei, nisa bula, namaste, assalamu alaikum, ni hao, or as everybody around the world now as Kiwis are using as an unofficial greeting today, up the waz. Can I begin by acknowledging my parliamentary colleagues who are all with us here today and our parliamentary candidates who have joined us today, and thank you all for being here. I'm always very reluctant to single out people for mention because there is such a large list of you, but I do want to single out our first Pacific Deputy Prime Minister, Carmel Sepuloni. Thank you for being here. I do want to echo the comments of my good friend and our Immigration Minister and Immigration Spokesperson, Andrew Little. Labour believes strongly in a balanced immigration system, one that's providing economic opportunity for all those who live in New Zealand. We stand for an immigration system that builds strong multicultural communities, that allows for family reunification, and that meets our humanitarian commitments to the world. We believe in an immigration system that helps to fill our labour gaps, that provides good jobs, fair wages, and has strong policy behind it to promote the workplace conditions with high standards that we know all those working in New Zealand deserve. And on those very rare occasions where individuals seek to exploit migrants here, we will never back down from pursuing and holding those individuals to account while ensuring that those who are taken advantage of are appropriately supported. 2 years ago, Jacinda stood before many of you on behalf of our government and formally apologised for the abhorrent dawn raids of the 1970s. They were wrong then, and they are wrong now. It was an apology that, in my view, was well overdue. Through my interactions with our Pacific community, the thing I hear most is that they choose to call New Zealand home, because they see this is a country that is full of opportunity. They want to seek better opportunities and a brighter future for them and for their families. Unfortunately, instead of finding that promised land of opportunities during the 1970s, many encountered discrimination, fear, and the heavy hand of the state. Those intimidating and invasive operations left a lasting scar on our Pacific community here in New Zealand. Those actions were not only unjust, but they were also deeply racist and prejudiced. Our Labour government has been committed to righting the wrongs of the past. That's why we officially apologised for the dawn raids in 2021. It's moving to hear from so many of those affected communities that it was a genuine watershed moment that carried profound meaning for them. Because alongside that opportunity We also put in place a range of measures to support communities to take up the opportunities that New Zealand has to offer. I think about the academic and vocational scholarships that we put in place for our Pacific communities. The Manaaki New Zealand short-term scholarship training courses for delegates from Samoa, Tonga, Tuvalu and Fiji. The resources that we have developed for our schools who choose to teach the history of the Dawn raids. And that would include the histories of those who were directly affected by them. And also, we have supported our Pacific artists and historians to work with communities affected by the Dawn raids to develop a comprehensive historical record of that period. And that was also something that we are very proud of. That was in addition to Labour's overall record in government of delivering for our Pacific communities. The work of our government, our ministers and our MPs who are here today is delivering real results for all of New Zealand. When we came into government, the unemployment rate for our Pacific New Zealanders was 10.1%. Under Labour, that's dropped to 6.2%. That's because of our deliberate efforts to support Pacific people into employment, education and training. We've continued to raise the minimum wage and lift incomes, helping improve the livelihoods of Pacific families and providing greater financial security. Our first Pacific housing strategy is helping to make home ownership more attainable, and we're building affordable, quality, healthy and fit-for-purpose homes. We've seen more than 1,000 Pacific students receive scholarships to enter our health workforce. Recently, some have suggested, though, that the profound meaning of the 2021 apology has been brought into question. But we're here today not just to affirm our commitment to our Pacific and to our ethnic whānau, but to make good on our commitment to right the wrongs of the past. So today I'm announcing that Labour, in the first 100 days after the election, will pass special legislation to undertake a one-off regularisation program for well-settled overstayers. Between 14,000 and 20,000 people of many different ethnicities who have chosen to call New Zealand home for the past 10 years will be able to apply to regularise their visa status. That will include every victim of the Dawn Raids era who didn't leave New Zealand. We are making this commitment because it's the right thing to do for a whole number of reasons. Many of the people who will be able to apply for regularisations are friends, workers, colleagues and active community members who have lived amongst us all. And we want them to feel like they can come out of the shadows. Those who are living in the shadows are more likely to be in poverty or living in vulnerable situations. They too deserve to live in healthy, warm and good quality homes and not in a climate of fear. We want their children to get the same education as their peers, and that includes the same level of support when accessing tertiary education that we know a number of their children are currently unable to access. Anecdotally, we know through our electorate MPs that many of the constituency cases we're seeing are immigration ones. We also know that many have made honest attempts to become regular in their immigration status over the years, but have faced too many challenges to be able to do that successfully. That's why this is the right thing to do. We stand by the apology that we made in 2021. The Dawn Raids were a traumatic experience, they were wrong, and they never should have happened. Labour is committed to ensuring that people are able to rewrite their stories from wherever they have come, and that they're able to find their place here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We have the back of each and every one of them, the same way we are in it for you. And now I would like you to give a very warm welcome to our first Pacific Deputy Prime Minister, Carmel Sepuloni.
Ta alofa lava malo lelei, whakalofa lahi atu ni sambula vinaka, ta aloha ni, ki orana, I orana, tēnā koutou katoa to everyone. Can I just acknowledge the announcements that have been made by both Andrew Little and by our Prime Minister, and thank you for the work that has gone, thank them for the work that has gone on behind the scenes and the leadership to bring us to this point. I know that there will be a lot of people in this room who are actually sighing a breath of relief, and there will be a lot of people in our communities that will be feeling exactly the same way. I want to acknowledge all of our ethnic and Pacific community leaders that have been able to join us today. I want to wrap up our formalities today by sharing some remarks about what today means for me as a daughter of the Pacific and the daughter of a Samoan Tongan migrant that came to New Zealand for a better life in 1964, married a farmer's daughter and raised 3 daughters here in Aotearoa. Also someone who sat front and centre at our government's ifunga, the Dawn Raid's apology in 2021. I've said on a number of occasions that it's quite a strange experience, and I know this is the case for my Pacific Caucus, Labour Caucus colleagues as well, to be both the apologiser and on the receiving end of the apology. The Dawn Raids was a dark chapter in our history, marked by racial discrimination and injustice against Pacific Island communities that had come to New Zealand seeking those better opportunities. For years, our communities faced targeted raids, unfair deportation, and systemic racism that tore families and communities apart. It is a painful legacy, and it has haunted us for generations. The government apology was not just a simple act of contrition. It is an acknowledgement of harm inflicted, an acceptance of responsibility, and a commitment to righting historical wrongs. It signifies our nation's collective recognition that these actions were unjust and a betrayal of our values as a compassionate and inclusive society. It was also intended to signal that at every level of society and government, we must look to learn from our mistakes. We must seek to create a more equitable and inclusive future, free from discrimination. The apology has informed what we are announcing today, or what we have announced today. It continues to represent a vital step in healing the wounds that still affect many Pacific Island families today. It provides an opportunity for reconciliation, closure and restoration of dignity for those who suffered the most during the Dawn Raid era. It reaffirms our commitment to upholding human rights and treating all individuals with fairness and respect, regardless of their background or ethnicity. At the end of the day, overstayers are individuals no different to me and you. They are our mums, they are our dads, they are our aunties and uncles and grandparents. They are also our children. There are people who have remained here, often in the shadows and often due to various reasons such as family ties, economic hardship, or fear, sometimes, of persecution in their own home countries. They live in a state of constant uncertainty, fear of deportation, and separation from their loved ones. Our response and announcement today is a compassionate and humane response. It is the right thing to do. We've listened and we will deliver on our commitment if re-elected. It recognises that these individuals are often trapped in a situation not entirely of their making. As an electorate MP in West Auckland, I have seen examples of those time and time again. People who have paid thousands of dollars to immigration advisors or lawyers, where mistakes or delays have resulted in people falling into becoming non-regulated or unregulated. Children who know nothing of their island countries and sometimes have found out at the end of their schooling that they are not here legally. People who attempt time and time again to regulate their status but fall short because often they don't have the ability to navigate the system. And let's not forget the implications for their families who are residents or citizens, sometimes living in overcrowded situations, financially struggling, trying to do the best by their unregulated family members. Many overstayers I've met, despite circumstances, have found ways to work, sometimes paying taxes and contributing to the cultural and social fabric of Aotearoa New Zealand. I'm really proud that the Labour Party is now taking steps to make the livelihoods better for those who have lived in the shadows for far too long. Today represents an opportunity for compassion, social cohesion and economic growth, but it must be part of a broader, well-balanced immigration policy, which is why I'm also proud of and pleased with the full suite of our immigration manifesto announced today. A fair and equitable immigration system is not merely a policy objective, it is a reflection of our shared values and a testament to our commitment to justice, compassion and human dignity. The New Zealand Labour Party will continue to advocate for such a system and work towards ensuring we are a country where the journey of seeking a better life is met with fairness, equity and open arms. Mā loa pito.
I just realised that when I spoke at the start, I didn't actually introduce myself. So I'm Priyanka Radhakrishnan, and I'm the Member of Parliament for Maunga Kea. I'm also Labour spokesperson for diversity, inclusion and ethnic communities. And as a migrant to Aotearoa, New Zealand myself some decades back, it gives me great pleasure to have and for us to host this Immigration Manifesto announcement here. So once again, can I thank the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, Andrew's the spokesperson, so many of my colleagues who are here today and all of you for being here today. Can I also thank everyone who's played a part in putting together today's event, because there's a fair bit of work that happens behind the scenes. So those from the Labour Leader's Office and my team here, Labour Maunga Kea team here in Onehunga, thank you as well. Can I also thank you, Tony, you, Bridget and Miguel from the Onehunga Community House for working alongside us to be able and to host us here today. So huge thank you to you all. Thank you for coming. There is some tea and coffee next door as well, so please do help yourselves. And once again, thank you all for being here. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you.
can do it, Bear. No, go get the back, boy.
Oh, go stand in the back.
You're standing at the back, but you know, Carmela's so tall.
Andrew, you come to the...
Yeah.
Andrew.
Andrew, aren't you right in the middle?
Someone to take a photo.
Just means touch them.
Karak, you go.
फोटो खींचनी है जसमीत फोटो
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe move a little bit.
You didn't expect all of us to come, did you?
Yeah, maybe move it like a little bit.
I feel bad
Just a little bit.
I'm going to need like two layers.
Because we've got to fit the PM and the DPM.
A little bit, but not much, because
But Andrew's going to be in the middle, isn't he?
Andrew PM and
Carmel.
And then Barb's also there. She'll stand somewhere.
I don't want to touch other people's mats, you know.
Put up my hand.
Right. All right, kia ora everybody. Today I've just announced Labor's immigration policy. The two main pillars of our immigration policy are a regularisation program for those who have been in New Zealand for over 10 years, whose status is not currently regular. And that includes the children of people who have not had a regular immigration status. And we do know that there are some young New Zealanders who are reaching tertiary education age who are unable to participate in tertiary education because their parents don't have a regular immigration status. The other plank of our policy is an extended visa for family members of up to 10 years to allow family members to come to support members of their family who are New Zealand citizens and permanent residents. This is something that we've been working on for some time. I notice other political parties now seem to be committing to doing the same thing. I welcome the speed of their announcement. I wish they brought the same speed to announcing the costings of their policies. But I do note that in addition, to the fact that they don't seem to have released their costings, the commitments that they're making today, they don't seem to have any way of being able to deliver on them, given that they're proposing to lay off a significant proportion of the people who would process these visas. It does highlight the fact that the National Party in particular seems to be very committed to giving with one hand and taking more away with the other. Happy to open for questions, Jess.
Is there any difference between what you're offering and what National is offering?
I haven't had a chance to look at the detail of what they're offering. Happy to answer questions on our policy though.
In terms of the 14,000 to 20,000, is that the number of people who are overstaying in total, or do you think that's the number who will pick up, and how do you know how many people are overstaying?
So these are, to be clear, these are estimates. It's not an exact science, because obviously the fact that they're not regular means that we don't have good information on them. It's our estimate of how many people we think might be eligible and take it up.
Is it fair to cap it at more than 10 years, because aren't you cutting out a chunk of people?
We also have to uphold the integrity of our overall immigration system as well, and doing it for people who were in the country for shorter periods of time would start to question the overall integrity of our immigration system. So this is deliberately for those who have been here for some time. There are other options for people who are not regular but have been in the country lesser time. For example, there is the ability to appeal directly to the Minister, which many people take up, and they do that often through their local members of Parliament. That avenue is still available to people who have been in the country for lesser time, where they can make a case, a good case for doing so.
You talk about the speed in which Labor's delivered this, but some people would say it's 2 years too late and should have come with the Dawn Raid's apology.
We needed to work our way through what it would involve. This is a Labor Party commitment rather than a government commitment. And I do want to be clear about that. We have been working through that as a government as well. We haven't drawn on the government advice in putting this manifesto commitment forward. We decided to make it as a party announcement because obviously there's a period of time to go before we'd be in a position to legislate it.
Is someone leaking your policies to National and Act? Because there's virtually no difference. I spent about an hour going through it and I couldn't see very much difference in that policy.
Well, the details were in the New Zealand Herald this morning, so I suspect they might have got a bit of a clue as to what we were announcing.
Including all migrant communities in that regularisation thing, how many sort of people do you think will be included in that once you go beyond the sort of communities that are involved in the
That's the overall estimate. The number we've put out is the overall estimate of all ethnicities that we think would be covered.
How many visas were in each category? Like how many? Like the family visas, how many visas will there be?
Well, in terms of the number of people who we think might take up the extended family visa, we think it'll be somewhere under 3,000 a year, and that's based on modelling off the Canadian experience, where they have a similar visa in place. So we've obviously adjusted for the size of our population, and if we got a similar uptake to what they saw there, it would be less than 3,000 a year.
What
so
do you
Ireland
say?
did it for 3 to 4 years. Did you consider the Irish model? I heard that you did. Why did you decide to go for the Canadian one instead?
We wanted a multi-entry visa over a period of time. The maximum stay of any one visit would be 5 years. Then they'd have to leave the country and come back. This is a visa to visit only. It doesn't lead to residency. And we also need to make sure that we don't fall into the trap of a person being here a total of 10 years. That then triggers a number of international obligations we might have to give them access to residency. This is just visiting to support family. That's what communities have asked for.
What happens after 10 years?
Undocumented workers. Ireland announced an amnesty for people who've been here for 3 or 4 years.
Prime Minister's answer.
Yeah. So what's that?
Ireland had announced an amnesty for people who'd be there for 4 years, as opposed to 10 years. Why did you decide to go for that?
Because we're looking at those who have been here for some time, are well established in New Zealand, have roots in New Zealand, in many places have now a stronger link to New Zealand than to the countries that they have come here from. That's the group that we're targeting with this. There are other options for people who have been here a lesser period of time who don't have a current regular immigration status.
What happens after 10 years?
After 10 years, people will have to ultimately leave. That doesn't mean that in the future they might not apply for a further visa, but given the age category of the group that are likely to be applying for this, I don't think it's likely to be a group of people who would be applying over and over and over again for the same visa.
What do you say to New Zealanders who may feel nervous about a whole group of older people coming to New Zealand for up to 10 years?
So they'll have to have medical insurance, so there will be no recourse to support from the state. So they'll have to have medical insurance. That would include, for example, repatriation to their home country in the event that they had an illness that meant that they needed that more advanced care. They would. This is no different to having any number of people who come to visit New Zealand. We get, I think it's about 250,000 people a month coming in and out of the country. So we are a country where people are moving in and out of the country all of the time. These will be visitors, and so it will be no different really, other than that they'll be able to stay for a longer period of time to support their family members.
I think the other thing is too, the family sponsoring them, so the children, their parents and grandparents have to demonstrate they can support them financially, so that will be a requirement of the application for the visa.
Last year we saw the shocking stories about the fact that the Dawn Raid apology, or this year, I've lost sense of time when it was, we saw those stories. How much has what happened with that and the fact that they were still ongoing somewhat overshadowed, I guess, the amnesty and what you're doing today, and how confident are you looking at the way that Immigration New Zealand at the time those stories came out said that they didn't think that they were doing anything wrong and they were simply working with the system that they had. Have you overcome and fixed those issues? So we have been working on the issue around regularisation for some time, since the Dawn Raid's apology, where we signalled at that time that this is something that we would look at. In terms of the out-of-hours activity, out-of-hours compliance activity by Immigration New Zealand, we have gone through a process around investigating that. There has been a whole independent review of that, and the government, as opposed to the Labour Party, the government has committed to legislating to change that, which will mean that in a very, very small, limited number of cases where there is justification for that, it would need to have a warrant from the courts in order to be able to do it. And in terms of the question around how much that whole thing has somewhat overshadowed, I mean, you're getting there now with the amnesty, and there were tears in the room today and people are stoked about it, but that has surely, what happened with that and the fact that you've made an apology and that behaviour continued, has had some impact surely on the Pacific community and the relationship with the government as well, hasn't it?
I think it's really important that we follow through on the commitment that we made at the time of the Dawn Raid's apology, and we're absolutely going to be doing that.
How will scope for further addressing the Pacific pay gap within the regularisation? Because it's still 20 cents on the dollar per man, even worse for women. You say you're raising wages, but it's still far too low.
Oh, absolutely. Raising wages and making sure that we're delivering equitable employment outcomes and equitable pay outcomes is absolutely something that our government's been focused on. Things like fair pay agreements will stop the race to the bottom, and we know that amongst those workers that are in that category of people who are currently locked in that race to the bottom in terms of wages, that our Pacific workers, often our Māori workers, they are often in those categories. And so fair pay agreements is actually one of our answers to that. The work around lifting the minimum wage and the flow-on effect that has, again, helps to advance the cause of those workers as well.
How will people have to prove that they have overstayed?
Sorry, what was that?
How will people have to prove that they have overstayed?
Well, when they come forward, of course, we will know that they don't have a regular current immigration status. There is some design work that will need to go into identifying what kind of evidence they'll need to present about when they arrived in the country and so on. One of the problems that we've identified from previous regularisation attempts that there are some people who would have been eligible that didn't take it up at the time because the information they had to provide, things like boarding passes from when they arrived, many, many years after they've arrived, they clearly wouldn't have those things anymore. So we've got to make sure that whatever information we're asking them to supply, they could actually reasonably supply.
Is there a chance this amnesty visa could be denied, or is it kind of an automatic amnesty?
Well, I might ask the Minister to comment on that in more detail. But
you still have to meet conditions, so you still have to meet the character requirements. You have to demonstrate that you are an overstar, as the Prime Minister has just said. So once those conditions are met, then you should expect it to be granted the visa.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how many overstayers have come forward but are bound up in red tape currently then?
No, don't have that.
I think thousands, or would it be?
I think what we know from previous cases when amnesties have been legislated for is that there is still, for some communities, still a reasonable degree of suspicion. They've been reluctant to come forward, or as Chris has said, some people just can't assemble all the information asked for at that time. We have better information now available online that will assist with processing future applications. So if we're in a position to do so, then we'll make sure that the way we set it up, design the application process, it gets those who do meet the criteria and who want to settle here.
Prime Minister Cleo would really like the opportunity to ask you a question.
Fire away.
So how did the political parties decide the colours that they would use in their campaigns? Did they draw lots or something? And if so, did you get the short straw, or why did you go with red?
Thank you.
We love red.
The Labour Party has a long history of campaigning under a red banner. Ever since the Labour Party was formed, it's generally campaigned under a red banner, and that's not just in New Zealand but actually around the world. So we're quite proud of the history of the Labour Party using a red logo and a red banner in its campaigns. Other political parties there's a natural option for them. The Green Party tend to use green as their colouring for obvious reasons. Some others will change their colours from time to time. I know the ACT Party seem to have moved from yellow to pink in this campaign. You probably want to ask them why they chose to switch their colours. But in the case of the Labour Party, it's really just history that's the reason that we can still use red.
And just a couple of more general questions about the campaign. What's been hardest about the campaign so far for you?
Look, every day has its ups and downs. Probably missing my daughter's 5th birthday on Tuesday.
Can I also just ask, in terms of this campaign, it feels quite different. Obviously, post-COVID, the environment is different. There's a lot more betting of people coming to events. There's a lot more private security as well as DPS. How hard and frustrating is it for you to just kind of do a normal campaign, which you said when you first came in that you intended to run a normal campaign, but you haven't really been able to, have you?
Look, we're trying to run a campaign that's as normal as possible. Obviously, there's a little bit more noise around the edges of this campaign than there have been around previous ones. But I still feel like we're able to get out there and meet a lot of people and do a lot of the things that we would normally do in a campaign. And there are some parts of the country where that's a bigger challenge than in other parts of the country. Clearly, in Auckland and South Auckland in particular, there's a small group of people associated with Brian Tamaki in particular who seem intent on disrupting the election campaign. But actually, I don't think that's reflective of the overall mood of New Zealanders who do want to participate in the election campaign.
Do you feel like the face-to-face time you've had with people who are undecided and people that you could potentially sway to vote Labour is more limited than usual because you're not necessarily doing the big supermarket mall type visits? It's harder in the streets. Security is a lot harder, which will deter some people from wanting to actually come forward and sort of try and meet you.
Look, I'm not sure that many people make their decisions on how to vote based on whether they got to take a selfie in the shopping mall or not. I do think
some fleeting moment with the leader will be the only thing they have when they go into the
yeah, but I do think people put a bit more thought into how they're going to vote than that.
Just on the accredited employer work visa, isn't a system where the employer leaves it and there are job tokens where you can apply for multiple, you just have to prove that there's a vacancy for one job, you can apply for multiple job tokens associated with that. Doesn't that naturally lend itself to exploitation?
I think the reason we've commissioned the independent review through the Parliamentary Service, the Public Service Commission, is exactly to give us some assurance about the processing and the quality of the processing. The allegations that have been made is that checks that should have taken place haven't taken place. So we wanted to be assured about the quality of the processing. If the checks that are required to be made are being made, those checks are there for the very reason of minimising the risk of exploitative activities. So we wanted to be assured that that is happening.
But that won't examine the actual structure of the policy itself.
But the policy goes beyond just checks as well. So there are kind of integrity requirements on the employer before they even get to the job check stage. We want to know that the employer is capable of employing the number of people for whom they apply for job checks. We want to know that jobs exist. The employer has to demonstrate that they try to recruit domestically as well. Those checks are there for a reason, but they need to be carried out, and the review is ascertaining whether or not the checks have been carried out appropriately.
Can I just quickly ask about nzherald residents? They say they feel forgotten about with goat track roads instead of decent roads to travel on. Is that fair, more than 6 months after the flooding?
Well, we're still working our way through making sure that we're, remediating roads. Obviously, it is a really challenging, geographically, a really challenging part of the country to get all of the roads back up and running as they were pre-cyclone. But we're committed to working with our local authorities to make sure that we're supporting those communities. I was in Wairoa just this week past, actually getting an update on how work in that region is going. We're absolutely committed to seeing it through. I acknowledge that it can still feel quite isolating for communities who are still having regular disruption to their access. We're happy to take that one away and obviously follow that up. But we know that there are still smaller communities across the East Coast that are still experiencing disruption, and we want to continue to work with the local authorities, the local councils, to get that at least more regular, even if not back to the way it was, at least more regular as quickly as we can.
The Emergency Management Minister is off to Queenstown tonight. Do you have any plans to, or is it impossible to because of the campaign?
It just depends on the extent of the need. At the moment, the feedback that I've had as of this morning is that the severe weather band has actually moved off the South Island, is now working its way up the North Island, and that things are starting to return to more normal in Queenstown. I understand that there are some properties, a small number of properties that have been red-stickered. And so Minister McAnulty will be able to give us a bit more of an update on what's happening there once he's made his way down there, and identify whether there's any further follow-up support required from central government.
Why are employers getting re-accredited once they have made settlements? Sometimes paying out $100,000 to some of these employees. Why are they then getting re-accredited?
Not familiar with that allegation. I'd have to see the evidence before I could comment any further.
But there are multiple settlements that have been filed with MB.
Any employer that has a record with the Employment Relations Authority or a record of poor employer conduct is tagged and is unlikely to be re-accredited. I'd need to know the details to check the veracity of what you're saying.
So they should, if they get a settlement, they should be tagged and they shouldn't be getting re-accredited.
I'm telling you what the rules are. I don't know the details of the claim you're making, but the rules are very clear. Employers who have a bad track record do not get accredited or re-accredited.
We do need to
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody. Very good.
We'll definitely here, just for a second, we're going to really quick up the wires, the social media.
Okay, so we'll let the media hop out.
We'll let the media get their stuff out. Sorry.
No, I don't want to be here, but I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, Andrew.